This case begins on December 4th, 2024, in Midtown Manhattan. That morning, Brian Thompson, the Chief Executive Officer of UnitedHealthcare, was walking to an investor conference at the New York Hilton Midtown. According to reporting cited in the public record, he was approached from behind and shot multiple times. Surveillance footage captured the assailant fleeing the scene. Thompson was pronounced dead there. From that moment, the story moved beyond a homicide investigation. It became a national flashpoint. The victim was not only a corporate executive, but the head of one of the most powerful health insurers in the United States. And almost immediately, the case began drawing attention, not just because of the violence, but because of what investigators believed it might represent. In the days that followed, law enforcement worked to identify the suspect using surveillance footage, toll records, and cell phone data. Their investigation would soon focus on 26-year-old Luigi Mangione. But to understand why this killing triggered such intense debate, we have to move backward before we move forward. Because by the time police named a suspect, there were already questions about his disappearance, his health, and the ideology investigators say may have shaped what happened. Before investigators reconstructed the shooting, they began reconstructing Luigi Mangione himself. Public reporting described him as a former engineering student from a privileged background. But by late 2024, the more immediate concern from those close to him was not politics or crime. It was absence. Mangione had reportedly been missing after going off the grid. His family reported him missing in November 2024, and his mother, Kathy Mangione, had been searching for him for nearly a year. Friends and relatives said he had stopped communicating for months. That detail matters because it suggests a period of isolation before the killing ever took place. Investigators and reporters also focused on his health. Mangione reportedly suffered from spondylolisthesis, a debilitating back condition associated with severe pain. According to the cited reporting, he underwent spinal fusion surgery in July 2023. Social media posts linked to him described the condition and the toll it had taken on his quality of life. None of that explains the shooting, and none of it excuses it. But in a chronological investigation, these details form part of the documented background. By the time Brian Thompson was killed in Manhattan, there were already signs that Mangione. On the morning of December 4th, 2024, the timeline narrows to a single route in Manhattan. Brian Thompson was on his way to an investor conference at the New York Hilton Midtown when he was attacked from behind. According to the reporting, he was shot multiple times. Surveillance footage captured the shooter escaping immediately after the attack. At this stage, the facts are stark and limited. Thompson was killed in public in one of the busiest parts of New York City, near a major hotel, in daylight. There is no ambiguity about the outcome. He died at the scene. What investigators then had to determine was whether this was personal, random, or ideological. The location alone raised the stakes. This was not a hidden act. It happened in a corporate corridor on the way to a high-profile business event involving the chief executive of UnitedHealthcare. That context would shape everything that followed. Because once authorities began tracing the suspect's movements through surveillance, toll records, and phone data, the case started to look less like a spontaneous attack and more like an intentional act with a targeted victim. That conclusion, however, would depend on what police say they found 4 days later, hundreds of miles away in Altoona, Pennsylvania. After the shooting, law enforcement launched a manhunt. Investigators identified Luigi Mangione through a combination of surveillance footage, toll records, and cell phone data, according to the cited reporting. 4 days after Brian Thompson was killed, the search ended in Altoona, Pennsylvania. On December 8, 2024, Mangione was arrested at a McDonald's after a customer recognized him and alerted authorities. That detail, simple as it sounds, became one of the defining turns in the case. A nationwide search concluded not with a dramatic raid, but with a tip from a member of the public. Police say that at the time of his arrest, Mangione had a firearm, a suppressor similar to the one used in the Manhattan shooting, and a 3-page handwritten document. Investigators described that document as expressing disdain for the health insurance industry and for corporate America. Those items immediately shifted the public understanding of the case. The arrest was no longer just about identifying a suspect. It became about motive. Why target Brian Thompson? Why UnitedHealthcare? And was this an isolated act of violence or an attempt to send a broader message? Those questions would soon move from the streets of Altoona into court filings, charging documents, and a national argument over ideology, corporate power, and criminal responsibility. Investigators say the clearest evidence of motive came from what Mangione allegedly carried and what he had posted online. According to reporting, the handwritten document found in his possession included the line, "These parasites simply had it coming," a statement authorities viewed as evidence of hostility toward the health insurance industry and corporate America. Further reporting linked his online activity to anti-corporate ideology. Mangione had posted a review of Ted Kaczynski's manifesto, Industrial Society and Its Future. In that review, he reportedly agreed with some of Kaczynski's critiques of modern society while condemning his use of violence. That does not establish a direct blueprint for the crime, but investigators and observers treated it as part of a broader ideological pattern. This is also where conspiracy theories began to spread online. Social media users speculated about hidden connections and larger systemic motives. But speculation is not evidence. The confirmed public record supports that investigators believed Mangione was driven by animosity toward the health insurance industry. Beyond that, broader online theories remain just that, theories. Chronologically, this is the turning point where the case stopped being only about who did it and became about what the act was meant to say. And that distinction would shape both prosecution strategy and public reaction. After the arrest came the legal phase. Mangione was charged with second-degree murder, 3 weapons-related charges, and 1 forgery charge. He pleaded not guilty. Federal prosecutors also brought charges including 2 counts of stalking, murder through the use of a firearm, and using a weapon equipped with a silencer. Those federal counts raised the possibility of the death penalty. In April 2025, the U.S. Department of Justice formally sought capital punishment. Prosecutors said Mangione intended to generate opposition to the health insurance industry through an act of lethal violence. That decision transformed the case again from a high-profile homicide into a national death penalty debate. Then came a challenge from the defense. Mangione's lawyers argued that Attorney General Pam Bondi had a conflict of interest because of her previous role as a lobbyist for Ballard Partners, a firm that represented UnitedHealth Group's parent company. They claimed her pursuit of the death penalty violated ethical obligations because of those prior financial ties. That is an allegation from the defense, not a proven finding in the record provided here. In October 2025, a New York judge dismissed 2 terrorism-related murder charges, ruling that the alleged ideological motive did not meet the statutory definition of terrorism, which requires intent to intimidate or coerce. Even so, the second-degree murder charge and other state and federal charges remained. By the time the case entered its later legal stages, public reaction had become part of the story. A NEN-ORC poll from the University of Chicago found that 80% of respondents believed Mangione bore significant responsibility for Brian Thompson's death. At the same time, 70% said insurance company practices, including coverage denials and high profits, had contributed to the incident. That split is important. It shows that for many Americans, the criminal act and the system around it were being judged at the same time. One does not cancel out the other. Mangione still faces serious charges, and the killing of Brian Thompson remains, in the public record, an unequivocally criminal act. But the response revealed a wider frustration with the health insurance industry that extended far beyond this one defendant. Online, that frustration often turned into conspiracy theories and sweeping claims. Some frame the shooting as proof of hidden structures and coordinated wrongdoing. Others rejected that entirely and argued for reform without violence. The confirmed facts do not support every theory that circulated. What they do support is a timeline in which a targeted killing, an arrest in Altoona, and a contested legal battle opened a broader national argument about corporate accountability, ideology, and the consequences of a healthcare system many people no longer trust. And that is where the case stands. Not resolved in meaning, even as the legal process continues,